As promised, I am doing my very first episode of Girl Talk, the Bible edition. Okay, I'm so excited to start digging into this word because there is nothing more important than knowing, what you call yourself living by. So I feel like it's very important to learn God's word, the word of the Bible, so that we are able to learn these principles and then take these principles and live our lives on a daily basis through them, okay? Because God didn't leave them for no reason. He left them so that we could use them to have a life and have it more abundantly, okay? But the only way we're going to do that is by learning these principles and applying them to our life, all right? So let's go ahead and dig right in. First, I want to say that whenever you read the Bible was written in two different languages. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew and the New Testament was written in Greek. So I'm going to be coming out of the Old Testament today. So I will be covering a couple of Hebrew words today, just so we can really kind of get a better understanding of what the Bible is actually trying to say. All right, so I want to start in Genesis, which is the beginning. I think it's only right that we start there and just kind of pull a couple of scriptures from there today and talk about them for a few minutes. And then next week we'll come back and we'll dig into them a little bit more, okay? So I'm going to start in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. And it reads, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." Okay? So the first thing we notice in this first chapter and first verse of the very first book of the Bible is that God is a creator. He is creative. Okay? The first thing he did was create. He created the heaven and the earth. All right? In this first verse, we have him being creative, but by the time we get to the second verse, it seems like something has happened, there has been a shift in the tone from the first verse to the second verse, okay? Because by the time we get to the second verse, it says that the earth is without form and void, and that darkness was over the face of the deep. So what in the world happened between verse 1 and verse 2 to cause this big change, all right? Let's see, it says that we have God in the first verse being creative, then it goes immediately to him hovering or brooding over the face of the deep. And the actual word is to move. It said that he's moving. And so the Hebrew word for move is ra'ha. It's a hard word for me, but it's ra'ha. And it means to brood, to relax, to flutter, to shake. So we have God going from verse 1 where he's being creative and bringing light into a non-existent world, and actually creating a world. And by the time we get to the second verse, the tone is totally shifted, and now it's dark and it's void, and he's hovering and brooding over the face of water. And my first question is, where did the water come from? Because whenever I read the first verse, it didn't say anything about water. It said that he created the heaven and the earth, but it didn't say anything about water, okay? So where did this water come from, and what happened to bring this water about? All right? That was one of the questions that I had as I, was reading over these scriptures. Now, we know that God was, hovering and brooding over the water. And whenever I think about hovering and brooding over the water, it's kind of like, like when you get in a fight and after you finish fighting, you give out, because fighting will wear you out. It makes you tired. And you have to sit down and kind of get yourself together. You have to relax, for a minute to kind of pull yourself together because you wore yourself out fighting. So that's kind of what comes to mind whenever it says that God was moving over the face of the water. He was relaxing, after something disastrous had happened. All right. So let's keep that in mind as we begin to cover the scriptures a little bit more. All right. So there's a reason why he's hovering and brooding over this water that was not mentioned in the first verse. Okay, let's put that out there. The water was not mentioned in the first verse, but there's a reason why he's brooding over it. All right. Now, let's go back to the first verse and let's look at the word create, which is the Hebrew word bara. It means to bring into being. Okay, so when you think of bringing something into being, you think of something good. Okay, you think of something that is going to be beneficial. You think of something that's going to help. All right, something new and something exciting. Whenever you bring it into being, you think of life. All right, you think of life. You're not thinking of death. All right. So when you look at Genesis 1:1, we know that God brought the heaven and the earth into existence. Now, heaven is the expanse over earth, and earth is the actual dirt ground, that we walk upon. That's what the planet Earth is made of, is dirt. All right. So the heaven is the expanse over earth. Okay. So in the beginning, God created the earth, which is dirt, the planet we live on, and heaven, the expanse above the earth, which is the sky, and it's also where God dwells. Okay, so God, with his creative self, brought the heaven and the earth into being in verse 1, and by verse 2, the earth was without form, and was void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. So we have this drastic change between verse 1 and verse 2. Where water somehow comes into play in God's creation. Not only water, but darkness and void. All right. And we know from knowing God, we know that that is not of God. So what happened in between these two verses to cause the darkness and the void and the water covering the face of the deep? So I'm going to stop right there. Next week, we will dive more into what happened, the chaos that ensued that caused this big change between these two verses. Okay, so next time, y'all stay blessed, and I'll talk to you later.